Welcome to Raven Reports, where we explore the darkest corners of human behavior. Today's story is about choices, consequences, and how a single decision can change lives forever. The small town of Pine Haven sits nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where secrets are currency, and where rumors spread faster than wildfire. It was here that 26-year-old Megan Carter lived with her 3-year-old son Lucas, in a modest apartment complex called Westview Gardens. Megan wasn't born in Pine Haven. She had moved there 2 years ago, seeking a fresh start after her relationship with Lucas's father had collapsed under the weight of broken promises and mounting debts. Single motherhood wasn't easy, but Megan was determined to create a stable life for her son. She worked as a receptionist at a local dental clinic, a job that paid the bills but left little room for extras. Lucas was the center of Megan's world, a bright-eyed boy with sandy blonde hair and a laugh that could light up the darkest room. Despite the challenges, they had developed a comfortable routine. Weekday mornings were a rush of breakfast, getting dressed, and drop-offs at Little Explorers Daycare. Evenings were for stories, bath time, and cuddles. Weekends were their special time, trips to the park, library visits, and occasional treats at the local ice cream parlor. But beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary life, Megan was struggling. The endless cycle of work, childcare, and financial stress was taking its toll. She had few friends in town and rarely had time for herself. Her parents lived 3 states away, and while they helped financially when they could, physical support was not something they could provide. It was during one particularly exhausting week in October when Megan first met Daniel Reed at the Corner Café, a popular local coffee shop. She had taken Lucas there for a special Saturday morning treat, and Daniel was sitting at the next table, engrossed in a book. When Lucas accidentally knocked over his juice, splashing Daniel's shoes, Megan was mortified. "I'm so sorry," she apologized, frantically dabbing at the spill with napkins. Daniel looked up from his book, his initial annoyance melting into a smile when he saw Lucas's worried face. "No harm done," he said, helping to clean up. "Those shoes have seen worse days." They struck up a conversation, and Megan found herself drawn to Daniel's easy charm and attentive manner. He was new to Pine Haven too, having moved there 6 months ago to take a position as a history professor at the community college. He was in his early 30s with dark hair, glasses, and a quiet confidence that Megan found attractive. That chance meeting led to others. They would bump into each other at the cafe, exchange pleasantries at the grocery store, and eventually, Daniel asked for her number. For the first time since moving to Pine Haven, Megan felt seen, not just as Lucas's mother or as the receptionist at Pine Grove Dental, but as herself. Their friendship developed slowly over the next few months. Coffee dates when Lucas was at daycare, text messages during lunch breaks. Daniel was patient and understanding about her limited availability, never pressuring her for more time than she could give. He showed interest in Lucas too, asking about him and suggesting activities the 3 of them might enjoy together. By the time winter settled over Pine Haven, wrapping the town in a blanket of snow, Megan found herself looking forward to Daniel's messages, daydreaming about their conversations. He represented something she had been missing: adult connection, intellectual stimulation, and the possibility of romance. But there was something about Daniel that Megan couldn't quite put her finger on. Occasionally, she would catch glimpses of another side to him, a flash of irritation when plans changed, an intensity in his eyes when he spoke about his past relationships, a reluctance to introduce her to his friends. She dismissed these moments as normal complexities in any relationship, especially one still finding its footing. January brought a severe cold snap to Pine Haven. Temperatures plummeted, pipes froze, and the town hunkered down to wait out the bitter weather. It was during this cold spell that Lucas developed a nasty ear infection. 3 nights of interrupted sleep left Megan exhausted. She had called in sick to work for 2 days, using up precious sick days to care for her son. By the 3rd day, Lucas's fever had broken, and he was feeling better, though still not well enough for daycare. Megan was at her wits' end, sleep-deprived, cabin-fevered, and worried about missing more work. That's when Daniel called. "How's the little guy doing?" he asked, his voice warm with concern. "Better," Megan sighed, "but still not 100%. I'm going crazy being cooped up here, and I'm running out of sick days. Why don't I come over? I could bring some soup, maybe a movie for Lucas." The offer was tempting, but Megan hesitated. She hadn't yet introduced Daniel to Lucas, unsure about bringing a new person into her son's life until she was certain about where their relationship was headed. That's sweet, but maybe not today. Lucas is still pretty clingy when he's sick. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Actually, Daniel said, his tone shifting slightly, I was calling because I need your help with something. Remember that book collection I mentioned? The first editions? I finally unpacked them, but I noticed one of them has water damage. It's valuable, and I need to document it for insurance. I could use another set of eyes, someone who pays attention to detail. Daniel, I can't leave Lucas right now. It would only take an hour tops. He's over the worst of it, right? If he's resting, couldn't you slip out just for a bit? My place is only 10 minutes from yours. Megan's instinct was to refuse, but something in Daniel's voice, a note of urgency, perhaps, or disappointment, made her hesitate. And beneath her exhaustion was a longing to escape, if only briefly, the confines of her apartment and the demands of caregiving. I don't know. Please, Megan, this is important to me. You're the only person I trust with this. His words washed over her, soothing and persuasive. The only person he trusted. When was the last time someone had said something like that to her? Let me think about it, she said finally. Lucas is napping now. If he's still asleep in a little while, maybe I could come over very briefly. Daniel's relief was palpable. Thank you. Just text me when you're on your way. After hanging up, Megan checked on Lucas. He was sleeping peacefully, his cheeks no longer flushed with fever. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle hum of the humidifier. She stood in the doorway, watching her son's chest rise and fall, wrestling with the decision before her. Rational thought told her it was irresponsible to leave a sick 3-year-old alone, even if he was sleeping. But another part of her, the part starved for adult connection, for a break from the relentless demands of single parenthood, was already calculating how quickly she could get to Daniel's house and back. An hour. That's all it would take. Lucas would likely sleep the entire time. She would lock the door, and the neighbors were home if there was an emergency. She would keep her phone on loud. She would rush there, help Daniel with his books, and rush back. No one would ever know. The justifications stacked up like playing cards, each one more precarious than the last, but together forming a structure she could almost believe was solid. At 2:17 p.m., Megan made her decision. Lucas was still sleeping soundly. She tucked the blankets around him, placed his favorite stuffed dinosaur next to him, and left a sippy cup of water on his bedside table. She checked the locks on the windows, made sure the apartment was warm enough, and turned on the baby monitor, even though she wouldn't be able to hear it where she was going. With one last look at her sleeping son, Megan slipped out of the apartment, locking the door behind her. The hallway was empty. She hurried down the stairs and out to her car, the winter air biting at her face, as if nature itself disapproved of what she was doing. As she drove the short distance to Daniel's house, located in a newer development on the other side of town, Megan kept glancing at her phone, half expecting it to ring, but the screen remained dark. She told herself that everything was fine, that she would be back before Lucas even woke up, that this small act of irresponsibility didn't define her as a mother. Daniel's house was a modern 2-story with a neatly maintained front yard. As Megan pulled into the driveway, she noticed the curtains were drawn despite the gloomy day. She texted him to let him know she had arrived, and almost immediately the front door opened. Daniel greeted her with a warm smile, ushering her inside. Thank you for coming. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this. The interior of Daniel's house was surprisingly sparse, with minimal furniture and bare walls. Megan had expected something more lived in, reflective of his academic background, bookshelves overflowing with volumes, artifacts from his travels, perhaps some artwork. Instead, the space felt temporary, as if he hadn't fully committed to making it a home. I've been meaning to decorate, he said, noticing her survey of the room. Just haven't found the time. He led her to the dining room, where several books were laid out on the table. These are the ones I'm concerned about. The Fitzgerald First Edition shows some water damage on the spine, and I'm worried about mold. As Megan bent to examine the books, she felt her phone buzz in her pocket. Heart racing, she pulled it out, but it was just a news alert. She silenced it quickly. Everything okay? Daniel asked, standing closer than she expected. Fine, she replied, turning her attention back to the books. Just a notification. As Megan inspected the books, she couldn't help but notice they appeared to be in perfect condition. No water damage, no mold, nothing that required insurance documentation. She was about to point this out when Daniel placed a glass of water in front of her. Thought you might be thirsty, he said. Thanks, but I really can't stay long. Lucas will be waking up soon. Daniel's expression shifted subtly. Of course. But since you're here, there's something else I wanted to show you. He disappeared into another room, returning with a small jewelry box. I found this at an estate sale last weekend. It made me think of you. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small star charm. It's beautiful, Megan said, genuinely touched by the gesture. Try it on, Daniel urged, taking it from the box and reaching for her wrist. As he fastened the bracelet, his fingers lingered on her skin. Megan felt a flutter of attraction, quickly followed by a surge of guilt. What was she doing here? Accepting gifts, while her sick child slept alone. I should go, she said, pulling her hand away. The books look fine to me. No water damage that I can see. A flicker of annoyance crossed Daniel's face. You just got here. Stay a little longer. I made coffee. I can't, Daniel. I told you Lucas is sleeping. He finished for her. You said so yourself. What's another 15 minutes? His tone had changed, carrying an edge that made Megan uncomfortable. She stood up, reaching for her coat. I really need to get back. Daniel moved between her and the door. What's the rush? Don't you trust me, Megan? After everything I've done for you? What are you talking about? Please move. I've been so patient, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. Waiting for you to make time for me, understanding about your situation with Lucas. And the one time I asked for your help, you can't even give me an hour. Megan's unease was growing by the second. This wasn't the Daniel she thought she knew. I'm leaving now, she said firmly, trying to step around him. He caught her arm. We're not done talking. Let go of me, Megan said, her voice rising. I need to get back to my son. Your son, Daniel repeated, his grip tightening. Always your son. Do you have any idea what it's like to always come second? To be an afterthought in someone's life? Megan wrenched her arm free. I never pretended Lucas wasn't my priority. You knew that from the beginning. Did I? Or did you lead me on, making me think there could be something real between us? The conversation was spiraling in a direction Megan hadn't anticipated. Daniel's eyes were dark with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Hurt, anger, or something more disturbing. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. But I need to leave now. You left him alone, didn't you? Daniel said suddenly, his voice eerily calm. Your precious Lucas. You left a 3-year-old child alone in an apartment so you could come here. The accusation hit Megan like a physical blow. That's none of your business. What kind of mother does that? He pressed. What would people think if they knew? The daycare? Your employer? Child Protective Services? The threat was implicit but clear. Megan felt a cold fear spreading through her chest. Are you threatening me? Daniel's expression softened, but his eyes remained hard. I'm just pointing out facts, Megan. You made a choice today, a bad one. But we all make mistakes, don't we? The question is, what happens next? Megan's mind was racing. How had she so completely misjudged this man? How had she put Lucas, in this position? I'm leaving, she repeated, her voice steadier now. Don't contact me again. This time when she moved toward the door, Daniel didn't try to stop her, but his parting words followed her out of the house. We're not done, Megan. Not by a long shot. The drive back to her apartment was a blur of fear and self-recrimination. How could she have been so foolish, so selfish? All for what? A brief escape from responsibility? A man's attention? The justifications that had seemed so reasonable just an hour ago now felt hollow and pathetic. As she pulled into her apartment complex parking lot, Megan's phone rang. The screen showed an unfamiliar number. With shaking hands, she answered. Ms. Carter, this is the Pine Haven Fire Department. There's been an alarm triggered in your building. Westview Gardens, apartment 3B. Megan's blood turned to ice. That's my apartment. My son is there. He's alone. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ma'am, did you say there's a child alone in the apartment? Yes, my son. He's 3. He was sleeping. I just stepped out for a minute. Is there a fire? Is he okay? We're on scene now. The alarm was triggered, but there's no visible smoke or fire. We're attempting to enter the apartment. Where are you currently? I'm in the parking lot, Megan said, already running toward the building. I'm coming up now. She ended the call and sprinted toward the entrance, heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. As she reached the lobby, she could hear the blaring of the fire alarm throughout the building. Residents were gathered in small clusters, some in pajamas, others bundled in winter coats, all looking concerned and annoyed at the disruption. Ignoring the elevator, Megan took the stairs 2 at a time. reaching the third floor breathless and frantic. In the hallway outside her apartment, 2 firefighters were attempting to open her door. "I'm here," she called out. "That's my apartment. My son is inside." One of the firefighters turned to her, his expression grave. "Ma'am, we need to get inside immediately. There's been a carbon monoxide alarm triggered." Carbon monoxide. The silent killer. Megan fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking so badly she could barely insert them into the lock. The firefighter gently took them from her, opened the door, and the team rushed inside, Megan on their heels. "Lucas!" she screamed, running toward his bedroom. "Lucas, baby! Mommy's here!" The room was as she had left it, the humidifier humming, the blankets neat, the stuffed dinosaur in place, but the bed was empty. "Lucas?" Megan's voice broke as panic overtook her. She dropped to her knees, looking under the bed. Nothing. She checked the closet, the bathroom, every corner of the small apartment, the firefighters joining in the search. "When did you last see your son, ma'am?" one of them asked. "About an hour ago. He was sleeping. I just stepped out for a minute. I shouldn't have left. Oh God. Where is he?" The firefighters exchanged looks. One of them spoke into his radio, requesting police assistance. The other continued to search the apartment, checking cabinets, behind furniture, anywhere a small child might hide. Megan was beyond panic now, in a state of pure terror. Where was Lucas? Had someone taken him? Had he wandered out of the apartment somehow? Was it possible she had left the door unlocked in her haste? And then another, more chilling thought. Daniel. His strange behavior, his anger when she tried to leave, his parting words. "We're not done, Megan. Not by a long shot. But how would he have known the apartment would be empty? How would he have gained access? And most disturbingly, how would he have known to trigger the carbon monoxide alarm? Unless he had planned this all along. The call about the books, the guilt trip, the manipulation to get her to leave Lucas alone. Had it all been a setup? Before Megan could voice these suspicions, there was a commotion at the apartment door. A neighbor, Mrs. Patel from apartment 3A, appeared in the doorway, holding Lucas in her arms. "Megan, thank goodness you're here. I've been so worried." Megan rushed forward, taking her son into her arms, holding him so tightly he squirmed in protest. "Lucas! Oh my God, Lucas! You're okay. You're okay." She covered his face with kisses, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Mama." Loud noise, Lucas said, his little face scrunched in concern. "Scary noise. I know, baby, I know. But you're safe now. Mommy's got you." Mrs. Patel explained that she had heard Lucas crying through the walls shortly after the alarm went off. When no one responded to her knocks, she tried the door and found it unlocked. Concerned about the alarm and the crying child, she had taken Lucas to her apartment for safety. "I tried calling you," Mrs. Patel said, "but it went straight to voicemail. I was about to call the police when the fire department arrived." Megan couldn't speak through her tears of relief and shame. The door had been unlocked. In her rush to get to Daniel's, in her selfish moment of escape, she had failed to properly secure her home, her child. The firefighters were checking the apartment's carbon monoxide detector. "It appears to be functioning correctly," one of them reported, "but we're not detecting any significant levels of CO now." "Could it have been a false alarm?" Megan asked, still clutching Lucas. "Possibly, or there could have been a temporary source that's no longer active. We'll need to do a thorough check of all gas appliances." As the firefighters continued their inspection, a police officer arrived, responding to the call about a potentially missing child. Megan had to explain the situation, how she had left Lucas alone, how she had returned to find the alarm going off and her son missing, how her neighbor had rescued him from the unlocked apartment. The officer's expression remained neutral, but Megan could feel the judgment behind his professional demeanor. "Ma'am, leaving a child of that age alone is a serious matter. I'll need to file a report, and there may be a follow-up from Child Protective Services." Megan nodded, too drained to argue or defend herself. She deserved whatever consequences came her way. She had put her child at risk, betrayed the most fundamental trust. As the officer took her statement, Megan's thoughts returned to Daniel. Had it all been a coincidence? His urgent request for help, the carbon monoxide alarm, the unlocked door, or was there something more sinister at play? She mentioned her concerns to the officer, describing Daniel's behavior and her suspicions. The officer made note of it but seemed skeptical. "Without evidence of his involvement, there's not much we can do, but we'll look into it." After the firefighters gave the all clear and the police had taken her statement, Megan was left alone with Lucas in the quiet apartment. The alarm had been reset, the building's residents had returned to their homes, and the crisis had passed. But for Megan, the ordeal was far from over. As she prepared Lucas for bed that night, her phone buzzed with a text message. Unknown number. Hope everything is okay at home. Heard there was quite a commotion at Westview Gardens today. Strange coincidence. Megan stared at the message, a chill running down her spine. It had to be Daniel. How else would he know about the alarm? She blocked the number immediately, then sat on the edge of her bed, shaking. This wasn't over. She could feel it in her bones. Whatever game Daniel was playing, whatever obsession or vendetta drove him, he wasn't going to simply disappear from their lives. The next morning, Megan called in sick to work again and spent the day making arrangements. She contacted her parents, explaining the situation in tearful, shameful detail. They were shocked but supportive, offering her a place to stay until she could get back on her feet. She called Lucas's daycare to withdraw him, cited a family emergency, and promised to settle her account. She began packing essentials, planning to leave as soon as possible. But as she was loading suitcases into her car that evening, another text arrived from a different unknown number. Running away, Megan? That's not very responsible. What would the authorities think? Megan froze, looking around the parking lot. Was he watching her? How did he know she was planning to leave? A movement caught her eye. A car parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. As she stared, the headlights flashed once, briefly illuminating the driver's face. Daniel. Megan rushed back inside, double-locked the door, and called the police. By the time they arrived, the car was gone. Once again, she explained her fears, showed them the text messages, described the car. Once again, they took notes, promised to follow up, but without clear evidence of a threat or a crime, their options were limited. Change your number, the officer advised. Document any further contact. If he shows up here again, call us immediately. That night, Megan barely slept, jumping at every sound, checking on Lucas repeatedly. By morning, she had made a new decision. She wouldn't run. Running would only confirm her guilt, her weakness, and there was no guarantee Daniel wouldn't follow. Instead, she would fight back. She would protect her son and herself from this man who had inserted himself into their lives under false pretenses, who had manipulated her moment of weakness into a nightmare. Her first step was to call a lawyer, who advised her to seek a restraining order based on the harassing messages and the incident in the parking lot. It wasn't a perfect solution. Restraining orders were often just pieces of paper to determine stalkers, but it was a start, a legal record of her concerns. Next, she went to the community college where Daniel had claimed to work as a history professor. To her shock, there was no Daniel Reed on the faculty. The position he had described didn't exist. Who was this man? If he had lied about his job, what else had he lied about? With growing unease, Megan began to dig deeper. She searched social media, finding no profiles matching his name and face. She checked public records, property databases, anything she could access. The house he lived in was rented under a different name, Thomas Grayson. The more she discovered, the more frightened she became. This wasn't just a man who had become inappropriately attached to her. This was someone living under a false identity, someone who had deliberately targeted her. But why? The answer came 3 days later in the form of a newspaper article from a town 2 states away. A woman named Jennifer Miller had been found dead in her home a year ago, carbon monoxide poisoning the official cause. She had a 4-year-old son who survived, having been at a sleepover at the time. Jennifer's boyfriend, David Gray, was initially questioned but cleared of any involvement. The death was ruled accidental. The article included a photo of Jennifer, a young woman with blonde hair and a striking resemblance to Megan. And there, in the background of another photo, was David Gray, Daniel. Megan's blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The targeting hadn't been random. The resemblance to Jennifer, the interest in Lucas, the carbon monoxide alarm, it was all connected. But was Daniel trying to recreate Jennifer's death with Megan? Or was he attempting to right a wrong, to save Megan where he had failed to save Jennifer? Either way, the danger was real and immediate. Megan took the information to the police, who finally began to take her concerns seriously. They promised increased patrols around her apartment and advised her to stay with friends or family until they could locate and question Daniel David. But Megan knew she couldn't wait for the police to act. She needed to protect herself and Lucas now. With her parents on their way to help her move, Megan implemented her own safety plan. She asked her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, to keep an eye on her apartment and report any suspicious activity. She changed her routines, varied her routes to and from work, and never went anywhere alone. She installed new locks and a security camera at her apartment. For 2 weeks, there was no sign of Daniel. No texts, no sightings, no unexpected encounters. Megan began to hope that perhaps the police involvement had scared him off, that he had moved on to another town, another identity, another target. Then came the package. No return address, delivered to the dental clinic where she worked. Inside was a small box containing a silver bracelet with a star charm, identical to the one Daniel had given her, which she had left behind at his house. Beneath it was a note. "You forgot something. So did I. See you soon." Megan reported the package to the police, who promised to analyze it for fingerprints or other evidence. But Megan knew they wouldn't find anything useful. Daniel was too careful, too deliberate in his actions. That night, after putting Lucas to bed in their new apartment, a temporary arrangement until her parents arrived, Megan made a decision. She couldn't live in fear, constantly looking over her shoulder, wondering when or how Daniel would make his next move. She needed to confront him, to end this on her terms. Using a disposable phone purchased for this purpose, she sent a text to the last number Daniel had used to contact her. "We need to talk. Meet me at Corner Café tomorrow, 10 a.m. Public place, no tricks." The response came almost immediately. Looking forward to it, Megan had no intention of meeting Daniel alone. She had already spoken to Detective Rivera, the officer assigned to her case, who had agreed to set up surveillance at the cafe. The plan was simple. Megan would draw Daniel out, get him talking, and the police would observe and intervene if necessary. What she didn't tell Detective Rivera was that she had installed a recording app on her phone intended to capture any admissions Daniel might make about his true identity or his involvement in Jennifer Miller's death. The next morning, Megan dropped Lucas off at his new daycare, a facility Daniel knew nothing about, and made her way to the Corner Cafe. Detective Rivera and his partner were already in position, posing as customers at separate tables. Megan chose a seat by the window, ordered a coffee, and waited. At precisely 10 a.m., Daniel walked in. He looked different, thinner, more tired, with a tension in his movements that hadn't been there before. But his smile, when he spotted Megan, was the same, warm, charming, utterly false. "Megan," he said, sliding into the seat across from her, "I was beginning to think you were avoiding me. Can you blame me?" Megan kept her voice low, steady. "After what happened? What exactly do you think happened, Megan?" His tone was curious, almost amused. "I think you manipulated me into leaving Lucas alone. I think you somehow triggered that carbon monoxide alarm, and I think you've been stalking me ever since." Daniel sighed, shaking his head as if disappointed. "That's quite an accusation. Do you have any proof?" "I know who you are, David," Megan said, watching his face carefully. "I know about Jennifer Miller." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or anger, but it was quickly masked. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you? A woman who looks like me died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Her boyfriend, you, was questioned but never charged. And now here you are, using a fake name, setting up the same scenario with me. What went wrong with Jennifer? Did she catch on to whatever game you were playing?" Daniel's expression hardened. "You don't know anything about Jennifer, or about me." "I know enough to go to the police. In fact, I already have." His eyes darted around the cafe, locating the exits, assessing the other customers. Megan knew he was looking for the officers, but they were well concealed, just 2 more morning coffee drinkers in a busy cafe. "The police," Daniel repeated, his voice now tinged with contempt. "And what did they say when you told them your wild theories? Did they believe the woman who left her toddler alone so she could visit a man she barely knew? The woman who endangered her child's life for what? Attention? A break from motherhood? Are you really the credible witness you think you are, Megan?" His words stung because they contained a grain of truth. Megan had made a terrible mistake that day, one she would regret for the rest of her life, but she wouldn't let Daniel use it against her. "Jennifer's death wasn't an accident, was it?" she pressed. "You killed her, and you were going to kill me the same way." Daniel leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have it all wrong, Megan. I loved Jennifer. I would never have hurt her. Her death destroyed me. When I saw you that day in this very cafe with Lucas, it was like seeing a ghost. You reminded me so much of her, not just your appearance but your situation. Single mother, struggling, isolated. I thought maybe this time I could make things right. I could help you avoid her fate. By terrorizing me? By threatening me about leaving Lucas alone, which you manipulated me into doing in the first place? I needed you to see, Daniel insisted, an unsettling intensity in his eyes. To understand the danger. Jennifer died because she was careless. She forgot to check the furnace, left the car running in the attached garage. Simple mistakes with deadly consequences. I tried to warn her, but she wouldn't listen. I couldn't let that happen to you. To Lucas. Megan stared at him, trying to process his twisted logic. So the carbon monoxide alarm. A lesson. A wake-up call. You needed to understand what could happen. And the texts? Following me? Sending me that bracelet? I had to make sure you took the threat seriously. That you changed your behavior. It was a chilling rationalization. Daniel casting himself as her savior rather than her stalker. His harassment as education rather than intimidation. And the most disturbing part was that he seemed to believe it. If you really wanted to help, Megan said carefully, you could have just talked to me, explained your concerns. Instead, you created this elaborate deception. You lied about who you are, about your job, about everything. Would you have listened? Daniel countered. Or would you have dismissed me as just another man telling a woman how to live her life, how to raise her child? Before Megan could respond, Detective Rivera approached the table, his badge visible on his belt. Daniel Reed, or do you prefer David Gray? I'm Detective Rivera, Pine Haven Police Department. I need you to come with me. Daniel's face went blank, a mask dropping over his features. He looked at Megan, and for a moment she saw something raw and wounded in his eyes. You were working with them all along. You didn't give me a choice, Megan replied. Whatever happened with Jennifer, whatever you think you're doing, it has to stop. Get help, Daniel. As Detective Rivera escorted Daniel from the café, Megan remained at the table, her coffee cold and untouched. The confrontation had left her drained but resolute. She had faced her mistake, faced her fear, faced the man who had turned her moment of weakness into a nightmare. In the days that followed, the full story emerged. Daniel Reed was indeed David Gray, but Jennifer Miller's death had truly been accidental. A faulty furnace, a tragic oversight. David had been devastated, consumed by guilt that he hadn't noticed the warning signs, hadn't saved the woman he loved. That guilt had twisted over time into an obsession with preventing similar tragedies, leading him to Megan, a woman who reminded him of Jennifer in more ways than one. The charges against him were relatively minor: harassment, stalking, identity fraud, but they were enough to ensure he would receive both legal consequences and psychological evaluation. For Megan, knowing he would get help was almost as important as knowing he would be kept away from her and Lucas. The consequences for Megan's own actions came in the form of a Child Protective Services investigation. It was thorough but fair, and ultimately no action was taken beyond mandated parenting classes and follow-up visits. The investigator recognized that Megan's decision to leave Lucas alone had been an isolated lapse in judgment, not a pattern of neglect. Megan's parents stayed in Pine Haven for a month, helping her recover from the ordeal and rebuild her life. With their support, she found a better apartment in a secure building, arranged for more reliable childcare, and even secured a better-paying job that offered more flexibility for her role as a single mother. Most importantly, Megan forgave herself, not all at once, and not completely. The memory of that day would always carry a sting of shame, but enough to move forward, to be the mother Lucas deserved. On a crisp autumn day, almost exactly a year after the fire alarm incident, Megan sat on a park bench watching Lucas play. He had no memory of that frightening day, no awareness of how close they had come to a very different outcome. For him, life was simple again. Slides and swings, stories and snacks, the secure knowledge that his mother would always be there. As Lucas waved to her from the top of the climbing structure, his face alight with pride and joy, Megan waved back, sending him a thumbs up of encouragement. One moment of poor judgment had nearly cost her everything, but it had also taught her the most valuable lesson. There was nothing, no escape, no relationship, no brief respite from responsibility, worth putting her child at risk. Megan had gone to his house and left her toddler alone. Then the fire alarm went off, and in that moment of terror and consequence, she had found a strength she didn't know she possessed. The strength to face her mistakes, to protect what mattered most, and to create a new beginning from the ashes of what might have been. The end.